Hello, welcome to today's lesson. My name is Annie Karras, and today we will talk about history from the mid-1900s through 2001. We will talk about the Cold War, civil rights, and recent wars. After World War I, the Soviet Union, or today we know it as Russia, and the United States were not friends. The two countries wanted to be number one in the world. The United States didn't like the form of government in the Soviet Union, which was communism. Communism is an economic system where the government has more control over the economy, land, and factories. The fight between the two countries was called the Cold War. A Cold War means there was no actual fighting between the two countries. During this time, people in the United States were very afraid that the Soviet Union would start a nuclear war. This is a review question, but helps us to understand a little bit more why the United States and Russia were not friends at this time. The economic system in the United States is called capitalism. Capitalism is a form of economy where there's less government control, and the businesses have more control over their rules and what they do. In communism, such as countries like North Korea, Russia, China, and Venezuela, there's more government control. So you can see that because the United States and Russia do not have the same kind of economic system, this was a problem, especially back in the 1950s and 60s. So the first question you need to remember from this week's lesson is, who was the United States' main rival during the Cold War? Rival means an enemy, so someone that you don't like. So we can say the Soviet Union, USSR, or we can say Russia. Any of these answers works. During the Cold War, what was one main concern of the United States? Communism. That was the main concern during the Cold War. You could also say nuclear war, because people were really afraid that the United States and Russia would start a big nuclear war. Stopping communism in other countries. So because the Soviet Union was so powerful during this time, their form of government became popular in other countries, like Vietnam and North Korea. So the United States fought the spread of communism in Korea and Vietnam. These are called the Korean War and the Vietnam War. The United States also wanted to access resources in these countries. So there were actual physical wars during this time in Vietnam and in Korea. Why did the United States enter the Korean War? To stop the spread of communism. Why did the United States enter the Vietnam War? It's the same answer, to stop the spread of communism. Also during this time, there were many problems in the United States, such as inequality. But there was change in this time as well. Slavery ended in 1863, but there were still problems for African Americans, especially in the 1950s and 60s. Jim Crow laws in the southern part of the U.S. allowed legal forms of segregation. So segregation looks like separate bathrooms for black and white people, schools, drinking fountains, like the picture here shows, separate drinking fountains for black people and white people, and separate seats on the bus and in restaurants. So these were racial segregation laws that were actually legal in the United States. Black people were really not equal to white people during this time. And this was until the 1960s. This inequality created a movement for equal rights called the Civil Rights Movement. So many people in the United States at this time did not agree with the inequality, racial segregation, and discrimination against other races. So these people fought for civil rights, that's equal rights for all Americans, no matter what color their skin was. What did the civil rights movement do? It fought to end racial discrimination. Racial discrimination is treating people differently because of the way that they look. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is a very famous person during this time and in U.S. history. MLK fought for civil rights because he saw his people being treated unequally. He believed that all people are created equal. He worked to make sure that people would not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. That means he wanted people to be treated equally, not because of the color of their skin, but who they are. What kind of person are they? A good person or a bad person? That's character. He was a great, great man. He gave a famous speech called I Have a Dream in Washington, D.C. Sadly, in 1968, he was assassinated. That means he was killed because of his beliefs. Many people did not want black people and white people to be equal. So they wanted to stop him, and they killed him. Martin Luther King Jr. is famous for many things. Name one. Fought for civil rights, worked for equality for all Americans, worked to ensure that people would not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. The easiest answer here is fought for civil rights. Now we're jumping ahead to the 1990s, which we'll talk about later war. The Gulf War. In 1990, in the Middle East, Iraq invaded Kuwait because Iraq wanted Kuwait's oil and land. The U.S. wanted to help Kuwait, so they joined the Gulf War. The U.S. helped remove Iraq from Kuwait. So you probably have heard of Saddam Hussein. So he was part of the attack onto Kuwait. So the United States was fighting against Saddam Hussein. You only have one question about this war. Why did the United States enter the Persian Gulf War? To force the Iraqi military from Kuwait. That just means to take the Iraqi military out of Kuwait using force, so using the military. Another sad thing that happened, in 2001 on September 11th, terrorists attacked the U.S. in airplanes. Why did they do that? Well, for a lot of different reasons, but mainly because people don't agree with the culture and beliefs and government systems in the United States. And so they attacked the United States in airplanes. This was a very sad day for all Americans. What major event happened on September 11th, 2001 in the United States? Terrorists attacked the United States. Terrorists took over 2 planes and crashed them into the World Trade Center in New York City. Name one U.S. military conflict after the September 11th, 2001 attacks. The Global War on Terror, or War on Terror. This just means the U.S. declared a war on terror, which is against terrorists, for example, groups like ISIS. So the United States continues to fight terrorists today and to try to remove these radical groups from the world. Because the United States and other countries have experienced so many wars, the United States celebrates Memorial Day to honor the men and women that fought in all of these wars. Many people died fighting in the wars for the United States, and Memorial Day is a day in May that we can remember these people. You have a test question about Memorial Day. What is it? What is Memorial Day? It's a holiday to honor soldiers who died in military service. Let's review. Who was the United States' main rival during the Cold War? The Soviet Union. During the Cold War, what was one main concern of the United States? Communism. Why did the United States enter the Korean War? To stop the spread of communism. Why did the United States enter the Vietnam War? To stop the spread of communism. What did the Civil Rights Movement do? Tried to end racial discrimination. Martin Luther King Jr. is famous for many things. Name one. He fought for civil rights. Why did the United States enter the Persian Gulf War? To get Iraqi soldiers out of Kuwait. What major event happened on September 11th, 2001 in the United States? Terrorists attacked the United States. Name one U.S. military conflict after the September 11th, 2001 attack. The War on Terrorism. What is Memorial Day? A day to remember military soldiers who died fighting. Good job. Don't forget to make your flashcards for this week.